We entered Świętojańska street, which is the street that connects the Castle Square and the Market Square of Warsaw. The name comes from the Church of St. John the Baptist, the main cathedral of Warsaw, which we will see in a second. But first, let's have a look at one quite interesting detail that was added here during the post-war reconstruction. If you look above the first floor of one of the houses here, you can see several put-tows, so kind of small kids that are actually reconstructing the old town. You can see that some of them are carrying bricks or giving them to the one next to them. Some of them are planting the tree. Next to them, on both sides, you can see these two heads, which looks like the Venetian tradesmen that are coming from the wall as if they wanted to look what is happening on the streets of Warsaw. Next to us is the Cathedral of Warsaw, one of the oldest churches in the city and the most important one. This is the place where the monarchs would attend the Sunday Mass. This is the place where the royal offspring could be baptized. And this is also the place of many important public events. An interesting detail that you can see here are the doors of the cathedral. The doors show you two different emblems around. One of them is the eagle, which is the symbol of Poland, and the other one is the mermaid, the symbol of Warsaw. If you look at the different parts of it, you can see how the symbol changed over the centuries. For example, mermaid at some point was more a creature that has legs like an animal and then the wings like some dragon. How it looks now, we will see in a second at the Market Square. The cathedral, which is quite interesting, never looked like it before the World War II. Before the war, it had a completely different facade, but after the war, it was decided that this look, this image would be given to it, so to make it look like a middle-aged, like a Gothic church from this part of the country. Inside the cathedral, you can see a very unique wooden crucifix that is more than 500 years old and that comes from Germany. It's made in an extremely realistic way. So you can see the veins of Jesus, you can see the blood and the pain on his face. It's very worth to see it. And then under the church, under the Cathedral of Warsaw, you can also visit the crypts where many famous Poles are buried. Among them is literature Nobel Prize winner Henryk Sienkiewicz, some of our presidents, and also the last king of Poland, Stanisław August Poniatowski. Right next to the Cathedral of Warsaw, we have another church, which for many people can be a bit confusing. Why do we have two churches standing one next to another? Especially as both of them are the Catholic churches. This is the church of the Jesuits. The Jesuits were invited to Warsaw much later, around 400 years ago, by one of the kings. They were always very well educated monks. Behind the church, they were also running their library and their school. Right now, an interesting detail here are the doors that were donated to the church or that were put here for the celebration of 400th anniversary of the Jesuit presence here in Warsaw. This is the work of a world-famous Polish sculptor, Igor Mitoraj. You can see his works, for example, in Italy or in London, and as well in some other Polish cities. What's interesting and what's quite typical for Mitoraj's style is that he doesn't show the full bodies of people, but only pieces of it. So if you look at the angels here, you can see that those are made in very classical forms, but only parts of it, which is also an interesting metaphor of the Second World War history, so the time when also this church was destroyed. In the beginning of the history of Warsaw, the house didn't have the numbers as we know right now. So they had to find a different way how to show or how to point the address to the other person. One of the way how was to mention a characteristic detail of the house. So for example, right next to us, you can see a very big ship above the door frames. This is the house which belonged to the very rich tradesman who was also making a lot of overseas trade. That's why probably we can see a ship here. And later on by the trader of wine and the owner of the wine store that was located here. So when you walk here in the Old Town of Warsaw, you can try to find another elements and decorations like that which mentioned either the occupation or the character, or were just the characteristic detail of the house. On the small square in the end of the street, you can see on the ground a plaque that commemorates a very important event of the Warsaw Old Town. In 1980, Warsaw Old Town was added on the list of World Heritage List by UNESCO. It's quite a unique thing if you think about it, because we are actually visiting one of the youngest old towns in the world, but thanks to this very precise reconstruction and keeping the footprint of the streets of the middle-aged city, Warsaw was also put on the list. So now you have to decide, where do you want to go next?